Hello fans of Motorsport 101, which I assume you are if you're watching this video. That's a crap intro.
Roll with it. I sincerely hope you are if you are watching this, but if not, maybe we'll convince you by the time this video ends as I put to bed every ridiculous F1 story you've ever heard.
Yes, this is the start of a new series we want to do on Motorsport 101 called the Motorsport Mythbusters, where we literally look series by series at some of the most popular myths that are peddled by the fan base, by the media, by everything else, some of the most popular narratives, and we break them down and tell you how they're absolute hogwash.
Pretty much.
Or maybe they're not. That's the great mystery of it. We're starting off with Formula 1. I am the sort of MC, I guess, here, and Dre is the expert here, because
Captain Opinionated himself.
destroying narratives is basically what he does on a weekly basis on the podcast.
It's my hobby.
So we figured we'd collate some of the best ones together for Formula 1 and get this thing going. This will be pretty fun.
Sure,
So,
go for it.
right. We're starting with a very personal one for you.
Oh, really?
This
Try me.
I might move away a bit. I'm going to light the touch paper here, or rather Cameron Buckley's going to light the touch paper.
Sure.
Sebastian Vettel only dominated because of the car.
No, I'm joking. Sebastian Vettel winning because of the car, yeah, like basically 95% of world champions to ever grace Formula 1. I mean, it's a lame argument, as my brother's actually calling me right now. It's actually quite funny. he's gonna.
He wants an opinion on this.
He wants to weigh in clearly. But he's heard Buckley's call from like 20 miles away in central London. He's thought, I've got to get involved. No, but like in Formula 1, the guy in the best car wins. Sebastian Vettel was a far better driver than Mark Webber was. He was 5-0 in his career against Mark Webber head-to-head, and
Webber didn't even finish second in the championship.
No, never. Even though we often accuse Red Bull of having the most broken car F1 they'd ever seen until this year. But even so, like, Vettel was clearly better than Webber anyway. And 2 of the 4 years, the car legitimately was the best. There's no argument there from me. At least a season and a half's worth. But in the nature of Formula 1, the guy in the best car wins. The squishy bit behind the middle, sure, we care about them the most. But it's a mechanical sport, and mechanics will always prevail over driver ability. I mean, the driver ability. It's nice for us as fans that we can care about certain drivers and all that, but naturally, the best car will win almost all of the time. Maybe only Keke Rosberg in '82 might be the only exception.
Didn't Ryan King once drop a stat about how many seasons one team won more than half the races?
Yeah, if you go through every F1 season since 1950. And he just took a list in order, so obviously 1950 to 2016, we'll be 2016 by the time the season is over. If you look at any random year, you have a better than 50% chance of finding a year where the winning constructor won more than half the races in that season. So dominance is just a part of Formula 1, and the best car will almost always win. So yeah, myth busted.
Suck it, Vettel haters. He's been practicing that speech since 2012.
Years. I've had that stoke in the furnace since 2013. It's mental.
More from Buckley here, the second one. This was more prevalent last year, in 2015.
Yeah.
Red Bull only loses because of poor Renault PUs.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's an easy thing to say because Red Bull did genuinely really struggle last year with Renault as a power unit. They were, 4th overall last year, and They were behind a resurgent Ferrari team, obviously Merckx, and wasn't it Williams still? Yeah, Williams still finished 3rd last year as well. So Red Bull really genuinely struggled, but like Renault have definitely made forward progress with the engines this year, especially in terms of reliability. They've not had a single mechanical breakdown in either of those Red Bulls this season, something that not many people have actually noticed. And on top of that, Merckx are still beating them on more technical circuits where you expect Red Bull to be stronger. Places like Singapore we just had, where sure Ricciardo came very close, but Rosberg was not on the optimal strategy. Hamilton,
Hungary,
Hungary as well. Another track where Red Bull tend to go very strong around. Merckx was able to win that one again, and the calendar is a very balanced thing, especially this year with 21 races on it. And yet Merckx have won 14 out of 15 this year, or 13 out of 14. They've only failed to win once, and that was Spain this year. So, naturally, Red Bull still aren't there yet, and it's not just because of their power units. I mean, Merckx is just a brilliant all-round car. It's strong. It's got the strongest car in a top line, but it's also, the downforce is good enough where the discrepancies in maybe downforce over Red Bull isn't enough to overturn the difference. I mean, it's an engine formula now. The best power units tend to come out on top. I mean, like they've got the championship leaders right now Sure, Red Bull and Ferrari are factories, they're the big three right now, but 4th and 5th in the independents are both Merck's powered cars in Force India and Williams.
Yeah.
So the best of the rest is still going to Merck's as well, and Manor has made gains this year with Merck's new power unit to the fact that they're no longer the worst team in the sport. Probably Sauber is now probably behind them now, so it's still, I think it's more a power unit sport than maybe 3 years ago in 2013, where it was more of an engine form, where it was more of a downforce form. That's why Red Bull was so good back then. Now I think the engine plays such a powerful difference in Formula 1 that naturally, like, the best engine I think is more important than having a good chassis, at the moment at least. Maybe down the road that will change, but for now at least.
Nah.
Merck's still the team to beat.
Yeah. And final one from Buckley. Mercedes, they're a German team, so clearly they want their German driver to win and they want to conspire against our beloved Lewis Hamilton. #blessed.
Hashtag one race ago where Merck's compromising Rosberg's race to help Hamilton undercut Raikkonen for third very nearly cost him the Grand Prix victory.
That's a lengthy hashtag.
Yeah, I'm sure I can get it in 140 characters, I'm sure. But it's funny this gets mentioned because as it stands right now, what was I going to say now? Best way me word in this. They're an Anglo-German team. I mean, sure, the engine is German, obviously, from Mercedes-Benz, but the team is in Brackley. It's in the Midlands. It's
like a lot of F1 teams.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's something like 8 out of the 11 teams right now are manufactured and developed in England. Mm-hmm. So the English influence in Formula 1 is enormous, and it's an Anglo-German team. There's no question about it. I mean, sure, they play the German anthem when they win, but there's a massive British influence and engineering behind that team, and they, like, the way Mercs are function as a team, they've always tried to encourage to let their drivers race. They've only really gone against that when they've panicked. So like Hungary a couple of years ago when they gave Hamilton a team order to let Rosberg through and he didn't. I mean, that's probably the only real time that they've let their drivers scrap it out. I mean, Ross Brawn in 2013 at Malaysia might be the other example, the other team order scandal from that race. But for the most part, they have a very set routine where the driver in front gets priority, and I'm sure I'll mention that more a little bit later. But there's nothing to that at all. The Mercs have made many screw-ups that have affected both their drivers over the last 3 or 4 years. So, again, I don't think there's anything to that either, personally. And
that relates to one sent in from Joe McMillan. Nico Rosberg's mental game is weak. He only wins when Lewis Hamilton messes up. # Sky Sports F1. He didn't actually say that. I added that one for effect. Yeah,
you added that one for dramatic effect, of course. No, that just doesn't work for me because...
Hold on, we need to cut to David Brabham, who's now got a psychoanalysis of Nico Rosberg's psyche.
Yeah, on the F1 mid-report with Natalie Pinkham, everybody's favourite pregnant reporter. No, for me, you got to remember this, is that the way these races are calibrated... the Mercs that leads into turn 1 will probably win about 75% of the time, because the leading car gets priority on pit strategy because they've got to protect the win first as opposed to the car that's in second.
Yep.
They'll only cater towards the second car more if he's not in second place or leading the race. And we forget they're the most dominant team in Formula 1. On most days, the only people they're really racing is their respective teammate. So, of course, if Hamilton has a bad day, Rosberg's going to be the direct benefactor, and vice versa.
It works the other way.
Yeah, we saw it in Monza. Hamilton has a terrible start, Rosberg goes on to win. Germany earlier this season, Rosberg clean-clocked Hamilton in qualifying, one of his best qualifying laps. Day of the race is over after 400 yards because Rosberg spins the car up in third gear, loses the lead to Hamilton, and then that's the end of the race. Hamilton goes on to win at a canter. So... naturally, the way Mercs are... If Mercs as a team were more equal to the rest of the field, then there might be something to that. But the fact that Mercs are so far ahead of everybody else right now, the only person they're really racing on any given day is themselves. I mean, most of the time they're going to go to a race and they're going to win comfortably. We've seen it. They've only lost 7 times in this era. So... there's nothing to that to me at all. I mean, it's just... Rosberg, you just had arguably the best win of his entire career at Singapore. He was... fantastic, and he was put in a compromising situation by his team because they favoured Hamilton, and despite relentless pressure from Daniel Ricciardo, he went on to win. If that's not the sign of a driver's mental fortitude, and you're probably never going to be convinced by that ever. So for me, That was a win that should shatter that narrative about Nico Rosberg completely.
And it did for one
did.
weekend. Even Sky F1 were like, maybe it's Lewis Hamilton who's mentally weak. Oh my god!
Nico Rosberg thrashes Lewis Hamilton en route to pole. So I'm going to church on Sunday. I never thought I'd even read that headline from Sky Sports F1 ever. That was crazy in its own right.
That was pretty insane. Some that we came up with as well. Some that I hear quite a lot as well.
Yeah, sure.
Here's one for you. Everything would be better if we went back to V10 engines, guys.
Those V10 engines that were ludicrously expensive and put almost half a dozen teams out of business. And yeah, like, we forget, like, you know, it's a bit of a, I call it a placebo effect to make fans feel better about what they're watching. Yes,
that's all it is.
They sounded nice. Like, I'm not disputing the V10 sounded very... Stop that. I'm not disputing for a minute that the V10s were... I'm going to punch you in a minute. I was going to say, like, I'm not disputing that the V10s didn't sound nice. They absolutely did. But what I will also say is that they had their fair share of competitive problems. Often, we had times where they couldn't pass. The talk about turbulent air was still around in the era of those cars as well. They had to slow the cars down from 2005 onwards. And sure, the V10 sounded nice, but we had the same problems we have now. Like, we had one ridiculously dominant team most of the time in Ferrari who won 6 straight Constructors' Championships between 1999 and 2004. And Schumacher and Ferrari was dominant most of the time anyway. And many of those era of races were boring too. Ask our friend Chris Cook about this, who's reviewed many of those V10 related seasons like 98, 99, 2000. He's doing 2003 right now. Yep. So shout out to Chris Cook on that one. But he knows more than I do that era had its fair share of stinkers as well. They were stupid. Like, the budgets for F1 teams, but they were ludicrous. Like Toyota, at one point the budget was like $600 million for a year. And they were just starting to get there, but then they had to shut it down because it was too expensive.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it. From a fan standpoint, V10 sounded nice. The cars looked nice. I get that. And yeah, we talk about now about how engine noise is a complaint. We as fans love to complain about these kind of things, but if we're not willing to stop watching, it's kind of a moot point, really. We come to live with these things. We came to live with the hybrid era engine noise, the duck-faced noses in 2013. The engine's getting smaller and smaller as time goes on, and yet here we are, we're all still watching the sport. Even if we have problems with it, we still stick around. We as fans are stubborn as fuck when it comes to these things. So,
masochistic as all hell.
Exactly. So when that's a thing, you know, it's only really a moot point in the grand scheme of things, at least in my opinion, anyway.
Related to that, the cars look too boring now, and they don't sound awesome enough. Next year, they're going to have bigger wheels and bigger wings. It's all going to be a lot better because they're going to look awesome again.
But you'll probably have even more problems because of the fact they're going to add like 5 seconds worth of downforce to these cars as well. That's the big thing that people are talking about. I mean,
and remember, kids, motorsport science lesson: if you add downforce on the top of the car, that creates dirty air, which fucks the racing up.
You had that practiced in routine, didn't you?
I did not. I literally just came up with that on the fly. But I've had to bang the drum about how crap dirty air is for years. Trust me, it even affected these guys. It even affected NASCAR for the longest time. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Even very dusty diecast.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna have Ebola now as a result of this. But it's funny we talk about, like, again, like, I get what people are excited about this. You know, it's the Niki Lauda effect, like big chunky tyres, and you know they want to make their arseholes go like this. That's what he said famously on Sky Sports F1 last year. We want to make drivers' butt cheeks go like this, and make them scared of driving these cars. Have all these power, have these great big chunky tyres. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is something to be said about more mechanical grip. I get that. Having bigger tyres will definitely help with that. But the big talking point for this year, given that a lot of lap records have gone down this year, these cars are legitimately very fast this year. Some places they've actually broken all-time lap records, or certainly gotten close to them this year. And they're going to try and add 3 to 5 seconds worth of downforce by being more aggressive. And dirty air is one of the biggest problems in this sport, and we don't like DRS because it's too artificial. Like, what are we gonna do here? I don't.
You're either stuck with the Mario Kart boost button, or
races where it's gonna be near impossible for cars to overtake, or have the passes be too artificial. I mean, you pick your poison on this one, and like I like the idea that there's gonna be chunkier tires. I like that the drivers get to push harder because again, there's more mechanical grip in the cars, but. If you're talking about 3 to 5 seconds in overall speed through downforce, how are you going to pass people?
Yeah, but. Another one I've got down here. Every Grand Prix should be flat out flag to flag. Why should drivers have to conserve their tyres? They've clearly never had to do that before. They should just go flat out the whole way, according to the gospel of Mark Webber.
I was going to say, like, when did your Australian accent come up, mate? You know,
they need to be pushing flag to flag, mate.
Yeah, big sticky tyres.
They can shove it.
They can push flat out for the entire race. Because again, Webber came up in that time where you could do that more often because tyres could last the whole Grand Prix. You know, you were basically racing on grooved slicks all the time, and you know it gave off the impression like you were going flat out every race. But that was all a myth. There's been car management.
This really is a myth that's being busted.
Yeah, exactly. And car management has been around since the 1980s. Martin Brundle said that famously after the Canadian Grand Prix last year, where they said, "Oh well, you know, guys can't push flat out, and it didn't look good on television because we had team radio come out saying, you know, look after the tyres, look after the brakes." We saw it in Singapore just around with Hamilton and Rosberg being complaining about the brakes being issues and whatnot. And I know certain folks are saying that, you know, drivers should have more of an input on what's going on, but the way technology is, it's all about efficiency. You want to be as efficient as possible, and you want to be able to win going as slowly as possible.
Jackie Stewart coined it. Fangio
used it in the 50s. Ideally, you want to win by taking as little risk as possible.
You mean they were conserving their tyres in the 1950s? I thought everything was better in the old days. What?
You see what you got to deal with here, people. Yeah, it's
I'm simulating the audience.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just one of those things where management has been, as Johnson tries to find this page of questions again. Again, we're a real professional outfit on the show.
Stunted this too well. Yes, there we go.
There we go. But it's one of those things where we glow, like, we wax lyrical on the past, we nitpick the present, and we get excited about the future. It's what we as fans do, and we often have selective memories when it comes to these things. But like, we didn't know. Like, I did a debrief about this on Nico Rosberg and Team Radio, and how the sausage was made, basically, and how, you know, everybody likes sausage.
That sounds like sex ed classes at my old school.
It does. But like, the thing is, it's like, the analogy is everybody likes sausage, but nobody wants to know how the sausage was made. And basically finding out about Team Radio and people looking after the tyres, that was basically going to the sausage factory. Nobody wanted to know that, oh, they're actually looking after all these tyres. Again, it's another placebo effect. We want drivers to feel like they're being challenged. We don't like it when we find it not being easy, because we look to F1 drivers as heroes, and, you know, for better or worse, and that's ultimately your opinion on that. I look to them more as gladiators rather than heroes.
Yeah.
Me personally, that's something that King coined as an analogy. But like, we want to look at them as heroes, people to aspire to. And naturally, when it doesn't work out that way, and when we find out they're having it easier on paper than what we really think, we're going to criticise them for it, and that's probably just unfair on them, given the nature of sport, the nature of technology, the nature of trying to make things as easy for a driver as possible. That's the natural nature of tech. I mean, you want to make it as easy for your driver to win as you possibly can. You don't want to deliberately make it more challenging for him. So, you know, naturally that's going to be the problem with it all, really.
Effectively. We have two more.
Go on.
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
This is a big one.
Yes.
Danny Brennan.
Yes.
All pay drivers are just entitled, spoiled people who do not deserve their place on the grid. They just buy their seats over people with real talent.
Well, like Rio Haryanto, who we all suddenly felt bad for when he actually lost his drive to Esteban Ocon.
Or Jolyon Palmer, that lower series champion who became an entitled pay driver as soon as he joined the grid.
Yeah, no, as soon as he found out he wasn't as good as we all wanted him to be. That's the difference. And this is my key point about pay drivers now. It's not so much pay driver, it's a pay driver that we like. Prime example, Manor last year. Rio Haryanto got the nod over the people's choice, Alexander Rossi, when people were very naive about the fact that Rossi was very well funded too. It's how he got into Formula 1 in the first place, hanging around the Caterham garage, bragging about how he was the only American in F1 with a super license. You know, he switched to Marussia, very nearly got a job in there until, you know, Chilton, you know, ran out of money, then got more money. There was a cash flow problem there, and then obviously last year when Roberto Mehi ran out of money, he filled in for him, and he was great, and there was no one disputing his ability. He was great. He won those head-to-head matchups.
How do you also think Will Stevens got the other ride?
His charming Essex banter? No?
That you hear in the intro of every episode.
Yes. Will the Lad Stevens, as the internet quite rightly calls him. But, like, I get it. I get why people are against this narrative, because you want to see talent come through, and In a perfect world, I'm sure that would be wonderful to see, but Formula 1 is a business. Almost no drivers have gotten into Formula 1 off zero backing from outside sponsors. Sponsors, marketing, getting your foot in the door is all part of the game.
Motorsport is very different to football. You basically have to have some level of money to do it.
Exactly.
It's not a cheap sport at all.
Even to get into GP2 requires millions. My granddad has worked with Lewis Hamilton in the past on his junior scene, and even he said the amount of millions of pounds worth of checks they were writing under the table to support Hamilton to get into F1 in the first place back in 2006 was off the charts. We're talking millions and millions of pounds that was written off because of his talent. Obviously, that's undeniable. It's Lewis Hamilton, one of the best drivers ever, for crying out loud. But
in other cases, if it doesn't justify the return...
Yeah, exactly. Kevin Magnussen, prime example. Everybody loved K-Mag when he was in Formula 1 with Mercedes.
Internet's favourite F1 driver.
Internet's favourite F1 driver. He lost his seat at McLaren to Fernando Alonso. He was a free agent for a year. Stuck it out. We didn't mention the fact he had a very good Danish sponsor that got him back into F1 in the first place at Renault alongside Jolyon Palmer. But we used that card to beat other drivers with, like Jolyon Palmer,
Pastor Maldonado. Probably the most famous one of the last few years.
He never was able to shake that reputation after 5 years of being in Formula 1. A legitimate GP2 world champion. Rio Haryanto, another example, a guy that had won multiple rounds in GP2 the year before, was 4th overall in the championship. We gave Marcus Ericsson less shit and he finished lower in GP2 when he got in through the front door. Or Felipe Nasr when he got in, because he had a couple of really good races to start his career. And I was like, oh, well, Nasr's great then, isn't he? Even though, again, sponsored by Brazil's National Bank. So we pick and choose when to criticise drivers for, pay drivers and when they're not a pay driver. Hence why I've used the phrase, it's more pay driver we like as opposed to pay driver we don't like. And
basically, the long and short of it is, there's very few working class heroes in Formula 1.
It doesn't exist. They all need we're not all Mitch Evans. We all need millions of pounds to get in here. And again, props to Mitch. He's really sassy about the whole idea that he's never had a penny of funding as Mark Webber's protege to get where he is today. But he's in Formula E that came out and said, oh, Formula E is a real drivers' championship where, you don't need, but pay drivers won't cut it. Like, Antonio Felix da Costa said that earlier this week about pay drivers in Formula E when Red Bull's been cutting his check since 2010. What does that tell you? So you can't win if you try on this one. I just think we as fans
the whole idea of pay drivers is a myth in itself because technically everyone in motorsport's a pay driver.
Yeah, by pure definition.
There are club racers who are pay drivers.
Exactly, they'll pay to get in there. So naturally, it just doesn't. That narrative just doesn't fit. It just isn't. We just pick and choose when to use it, really.
Yep. And one more for you.
Sure.
I know you'll like this one.
Go on.
I like this driver very much, but even I have my issues with this one.
Go on.
Formula 1 badly needs more characters. It needs a modern-day James Hunt to save the sport by shagging everyone and having a cigarette on the podium or something.
Let me ask you a question. Would James Hunt's personality fly in 2016? It's a different world than what it was in the 1970s.
Probably not.
1970s, you could get away with smoking, womanising. That was the nature of sporting heroes back then. George Best, you had Barry Sheen, you had...
The Summer of the Playboys, 76.
Yeah, Summer of Playboy, 76, the Motorsport Mavericks. There was a great documentary about it on ITV4 the other day, the Motorsport Mavericks, so check it out. It was very, very good. But James Hunt's personality would not fly in 2016. There'd be too many people criticising him for it. If Lewis Hamilton now gets criticised, probably unfairly, about his lifestyle outside of the car, what chance would a smoking womanizer like James Hunt have? We are more... People might want to call it politically correct. I call it more socially aware. We're a more socially aware society now than we were 50 years ago.
We're more aware of what annoys people.
Yeah, we're because of social media, because of the instant gratification nature of social media, we can all criticise them much more openly. They're more accessible than ever before, so naturally it's a bigger avenue to criticise them because everybody's got a keyboard now and everyone can vent their opinions on these drivers. Now, for me, I'm not going to force an F1 driver to act like someone he isn't just to try and pull ratings. If Nico Rosberg is a certain way and he's not going to get fans through the door because he's not that exciting or not that charismatic, so be it. I'd rather him be that than be someone fake, because if you're fake, it comes across like that on TV. I know that there's certain, elements of hamming it up for the cameras. I know Jason Plato was guilty of that in British touring cars many years ago, and
he admitted to it. He healed up and played the bad guy to sell tickets.
Exactly.
As soon as you started getting that reputation.
So again, there is something to that. I mean, it can sell, just like pro wrestling. You know, you root for the bad guy to see get his ass kicked. At the same time, you want to see the good guy win ultimately, and often that's self-enforced narratives that we in the media often portray, but. I mean, F1 doesn't need characters. I mean, at one point, the most
dominant... That's to assume that it doesn't have characters anyway. I mean, what's Daniel Ricciardo then?
Ricciardo's the most charismatic driver F1 has had in maybe 20 years.
What was Sebastian Vettel doing all of last year? Trolling the Mercs in their press conferences?
Trolling the Mercs. And he's always been that guy, but we didn't take him seriously because we called him a sport killer 3 years ago.
But Kimi Raikkonen deadpanning and telling his engineer to shove off is not the only personality F1 has.
And you call that personality?
Exactly. Well, it sold enough knockoff t-shirts.
That's a myth in its own right. Kimi Raikkonen is the most popular driver in Formula 1 and he's got no charisma whatsoever and just goes blah all the time. And that apparently is our idea of popularity and charisma. So, again, I think we're kind
of... Hey, Kimi, how was your race? It was not too bad.
It was okay. It was okay.
Speak to James Hinchcliffe for better Kimi impressions.
Exactly. But, I mean... I don't want to be that guy to compare it to IndyCar because IndyCar is so full of characters. That's just who they are as human beings.
There's a myth-busting episode for the future.
Exactly. I mean, if you take a cross-section of racing drivers, you're going to get people that are more charismatic than others, naturally. That's just how people are as human beings. And sometimes you get unlucky. I mean, you know, again, this sport, Lewis Hamilton's a bit too PR. Like, again, Rosberg's very much by the book, despite him being very honest. Vettel's a bit more happy-go-lucky, a bit more free-spirited, etc. But Daniel Ricciardo is our idea of charisma, and most of the time he just listens to Arcade Fire and drinks champagne out of his shoe. That's our idea of charisma in F1. So our standards are clearly much lower than in other sports, but again, what can you do? It's just one of those things, I suppose. You know.
Simply so, and that is pretty much all the big myths about Formula 1. Just absolutely just trash. They're laying on the floor. We just F5 them.
Yes.
Myth down.
Myth down. I RKO'd the entire field. It was glorious in its own right, you know.
And they can't handle this.
They can't handle it at all. They can't see it either.
So we'll see you next time on this channel. Keep it subscribed right here, and if you're not already locked into the actual podcast itself, then please do. All the links are down there in the description below on SoundCloud, on iTunes. You can also choose to support the podcast and this YouTube channel on Patreon as well.
Give us your money.
So we can make F1 great, even though we've basically said that it isn't anywhere near as bad as people think.
Really? Kind of, I guess.
Tune in next week on the podcast to find out. We'll see you next time.
Sayonara.
Outtakes material. Can't find it. Doesn't matter. Right. There we go. Probably like man spread into my chair now. You just fly. Do you want to introduce it or shall I?
Go on, then. I don't mind. Saves me the hassle for once.
Well, you introduce most things.
I do, exactly. Just press the little circular button here.
No, it's recording already.
Oh, it's recording already? Oh, okay, okay.
It's all focused. I've set it up and I'm pro and everything. And you know what I'm doing? IoT YouTubers.
It's all yours then, man.
Honestly, yeah.